Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am Aggelos, founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network and From the Ashes. I'm here to introduce this little podcast for you. We're going to call it a episode 1.5 because chronologically this happened on May the 19th. I was invited to do a Q&A interview on the official Kickstarter Livestream. And I was allowed to take the episode and turn it into an MP3 for those of you on the RSS feed. So I hope you enjoy.
Welcome everybody to our Friday live stream. Hope everybody had an awesome week and is ready for the weekend. We here at Intrepid Studios are pretty excited because we just passed our 12,000 backers.
12,000 backers. It's moving quickly.
I know, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I think in a couple of days we might actually be the #1 Kickstartered MMORPG
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Holy moly.
Sinking in.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So with our 12,000 backer goal, I think that unlocks the Kickstarter exclusive die set.
Yes.
Yes, so that's going to be
All
some
sorts of fancy colors.
pretty cool looking
Yeah.
people out in the world. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Dungeon Crawler Network founder himself, Aggelos. Welcome.
Hey guys, thank you for having me back. I guess I didn't scare you off last time.
No, no. Actually, I think a funny thing about that, Aggelos, is a lot of people were really impressed with your ability and podcast quality, and that's one of the reasons why we reached out to you to do our official live stream Q&A. Is you had pretty positive reception. I think you run a good ship over there at the Dungeon Crawler Network.
It's almost like you've been doing this for a while.
I know.
A few years, yeah, a little while. I see you put the pressure on though. It's like, hey, you did great, so we're gonna bring you on, and hopefully you don't mess up. So
You better not.
Well, you'll be happy to know that in addition to doing this live stream for the Q&A today, we're also going to be showing off our demon skin that's in the Leader of Men package, as well as some additional pre-alpha gameplay footage.
Yep.
That I think Tristan. Oh my gosh!
There's
the demon.
There it is.
The
It's
demon
so big.
has appeared. Wow, that's a pretty good looking skin.
It is. I like it.
I'm
I'm pretty excited about seeing this.
I think you're cutting off the horns though. Let's pull it down a little bit, just a little bit. Pull that demon down. There it is.
There we
Yes,
go.
very pointy.
Now they'll fight. They can fight.
Those are our
Michael.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
That didn't look right.
Those
got
are
some Street Fighter Hadouken thing going on here, you know.
And then we also have the gameplay footage that we're actually recording right now. It's going to be of one of the Great Divine Gateways.
Yeah.
Yes. I believe it's in the Ayla starting area.
Yep.
Very cool. Again, it's going to be pre-alpha footage, so it's going to look unfinished, unpolished, but
Right.
it is.
That's
our
what we got to
game.
show,
Right,
so,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
we're gonna show you.
Pretty excited. So, Aggelos, take it easy.
You had a couple questions for us.
I think I sent you a few, just a handful,
Just
maybe.
a handful.
Just to be clear, I believe it was around 70 questions.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be able to get through all of those, unless they're all yes or no only.
All right, we got 50 seconds per question.
50 seconds per question. All right. All right, let's do this. You guys ready? Because I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, so I broke everything down into different subsections. So, I mean, the first thing I'm going to try to hit up is combat, because that seems to be something that people like. And a lot of people have questions about tanking, because that is a thing. Now, you mentioned before that tanks will have abilities that will more or less force an enemy to attack them instead of a weaker target. But how does the blocking work? Will there be like an active block, or do you block all projectiles in like a template around the person, or just as a thing aimed at the tank? Or is it even a toggleable ability?
So I think there's
bit of the above.
I was going to say, I
both.
think there's a little combination of both there.
Yeah.
And I think that blocking can refer to a couple things. One, it can be referring to incoming damage and or projectiles or hits that are against you personally, and then your ability to exert control over the battlefield, potentially with creating zones where damage cannot pass through and or effects cannot go through, with walls potentially and stuff like that. But I think there's a mixture of the two of those.
Yeah, the tanks are going to be focused on like changing how the battlefield flows, basically. So, if they need to stop a charge, right, they can probably do that in a number of different ways. So it's going to be about controlling the battlefield, not necessarily controlling characters.
Sure.
But yeah, trying to deny people entry to areas and to take damage on behalf of others.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the primary methods of taking damage on behalf of others is potentially through a taunt skill that can also be effective, not just in PvE, but in PvP as well.
Too.
For
So
sure.
they can target swap or force other people to target swap to them, so that they get a little bit of time as the focus, and kind of make it difficult for the opposing DPS classes.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you actually mentioned something that's really fascinating. Guess what? This is going to make it like 71 questions because it's a follow-up to what you just said.
Wow. Okay.
Figuring out in the
we
thought.
Gotcha.
You were just mentioning controlling the battlefield. Are we talking about like aerial denial and with collision? Like being able to put walls and stuff up for collision?
Yes.
Ah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're actually...
I think, in fact, as a matter of fact, you may have seen in one of our mage gameplay videos, there's an example of a skill that's used to kind of drop back from combat, right, to give that ranged DPS a little bit more room. And while they drop back, they expose a wall
Right.
that has collision effect on the opponent when they try to impact and move past that wall for a period of time.
It's not huge, it's small, but it's
Right.
enough to give space, extra space beyond the movement.
And it's a very tactical performance on the battlefield to know when to use that skill to evade danger or just get that
Just to
extra
break
gap.
things up, give
Right.
yourself a chance to breathe.
Right.
Nice, nice. Now, will Tank be able to be like in the Vanguard, shielding his companions behind him from attacks, that don't necessarily target him? That does affect with that shield wall, right? Like that will, you could technically use that aerial denial to protect people behind you, correct?
Right. So walls are going to be summoned in the game, so to speak, and they will perform a collision.
Right, break up line of sight and line of
Exactly.
effect, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Will tanking be reserved to the actual tank class that you have, or is it possible to build a separate class, such as like a mage tank with different tanking attributes, either through armor or gear, or even maybe a secondary class or subclass, as I was calling it in our interview?
There's definitely ways to make your class more tanky using our secondary class system if you're going to go down that secondary tank class avenue. But the question, I guess, is more pertaining to the role of a tank. Will a tanky mage be able to compete on the tank scale with a tanky tank?
Yeah.
Right.
And the answer to that's going to be no. A tanky tank is always going to be the best at tanking.
Gotcha.
So that's with reservation,
Right.
right? Like it's going to depend on how the player uses their abilities. It's if that tank has mastery of what they're doing, they'll have more options available to them to mitigate damage on themselves and others than a mage that's heavily focused on their secondary class and putting a lot of tank abilities in. Now, that's assuming two people of the same skill level.
All
that
things being
all
average.
changes based on what the player wants to do and how they're using their tools.
Right.
Assuming all things being average, both in relation to items, gear, and skill.
Right. But I mean, one of these other more tanky other classes could perhaps fill role of like an off tank, perhaps, or something of that nature.
Definitely, definitely,
for
100%.
For sure.
There'll be a little bit of a gradient between like being able to take the off tank to the tank, like the primary tank role. And there certainly will be situations where a mage tank probably could tank
suffice
certain things,
depending on what they're encountering.
on what the fight is, how they're equipped, what they're doing.
Yes.
So
Excellent. Okay. You have a lot of summoner lovers in here, okay? And I know you mentioned a little bit with there, but
in recent times, all right, and we all know with these modern MMOs that pet classes aren't really pet classes. They are characters with a pet that does a little bit of damage on the side, and it's a stat stick. How much control are summoners going to actually have in relation to what they're actually summoning during battle? How interactive will it be? Will they be able to control it in some way? And how reliant upon the summons is a summoner? Because in World of Warcraft, for instance, if your hunter pet dies, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, me personally, my idea of the summoner class and what we've built so far with it is summoner classes kind of live and breathe through their summon, like through their no, I don't want to call it a pet because it's more incumbent to their identity, their connection with it on a different plane. But the summoner class is going to have a lot of agency through their summon. It's going to have a lot of abilities through the summon. You're going to have a lot of control over that summon when it comes to battle.
Right.
And I think that even some of the skills pertain to what abilities the summon itself has through the summoner.
Right. Like you'll find the actual summons creature's abilities on your own hotbar, not like its own hotbar.
Exactly.
Oh, so it takes over.
You'll be doing things, kind of,
sort of. You're playing through
it's
the summoner.
You're the proxy of the summon, basically.
Yeah, and you enable it to perform certain roles and abilities depending on what direction you go with the customizing the summon itself. And yes, those, as you said, you're going to find those summon skills on your hotbar.
Right.
And that's an extension of your capability in battle and exerting that control in the game.
Right. And I believe I heard somewhere that with the collaboration of multiple summoners, you would be able to summon these larger summons like golems and.
Back it out.
Aggelos.
All right, guys, I'm out. That's the end of the interview.
Why did you do this? After the show, I'm going to get a beating. Okay, so yes, one of the skills we're looking into is going to be kind of a penultimate summoner skill that can see itself in a siege mechanic setting, where all summoners of different races potentially can come together and use an ultimate ability that allows one summoner to take over this arcane, golem kind of thing, this giant siege summon that's going to be performing, certain types of abilities on the battlefield to either have an AoE presence against other opponents or potentially knock down doors and buildings and all that kind of stuff. It's something that we're looking at.
Intended to be used during sieges, not necessarily a raid.
Right.
Sure.
But yeah, in very specific context, this is going to be something that we are talking about.
Yes, talking.
The group aspect is something we really appreciate. So.
Well, sorry. Chat seems to like it, right? So that's what I'm seeing right now.
We like it.
We like it.
I love it. I mean, I think that we're not just talking about it.
Yeah.
More than likely you'll see it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've seen a comparison to me and Jesus at some point. But speaking of that, I understand that when your character dies, you lose experience. However, what is the system in place for respawning or returning to life? Will there be a corpse retrieval function, or will you respawn to the nearest node that you were affiliated with?
To clarify, you don't really lose experience, you gain negative experience, and there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Negative experience has a cumulative effect on your abilities and your performance and stuff like that, and it will require you getting rid of that experience debt. You're not going to be de-leveling in the game.
Right.
But in regards to respawning and stuff, I think that we're going with a standard respawn.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do corpse retrieval
No.
in the way that it might happen in EQ1. There's kind of a cool, fun idea about it. It sounds cool, but in practice, generally, it's awful. It's really
pretty tedious.
Right.
Yeah.
really tedious.
You'll be respawning in the world somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. No, that's cool. You showed off the Predator, which is the Rogue Ranger class stealth in various videos, all of which are gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you.
But a lot of questions we had, especially this early, and I know it's very early, and there will be tweaking with this. But how long is it intended to last? And is there a radius around the player that they're invisible with until an enemy player or spawn enters that radius, or is it just that semi-transparent shimmer?
I made a statement last night on the Discord in regards to, I think there was a conversation being had about what people can glean from seeing effects and stuff in our pre-alpha footage. And I just want to make sure that people are aware. These skills and effects, sometimes we play with the limitations, cooldowns, and all that kind of stuff. It's not representative of actual skills that are going to appear and how long they're going to last in the game. So we don't envision a rogue being able to stay invisible forever. Right. And there is going to be somewhat of a shimmer effect when it comes to visually giving a clue and a location of where something is.
Yeah, and it's also like if you think about like when we talk about utility abilities, there are certain people who are going to be able to detect them from farther away.
Arcane eye.
That kind of stuff. There'll be abilities that allow you to kind of like seek out, or will function kind of like as an anti-stealth. So,
for example, like the summoner may have an arcane eye ability that has better stealth detection. The cleric may have a spotlight.
The ranger has his scouting abilities.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next subsection for guilds, because I run a big guild. Steven, you ran a big guild. And there's a lot of people in the early community that are trying to, prepare their guilds. So, you mentioned before that guilds will need to be like leveled up, and there will be progression, and that there'll be upgrades that you can do to increase your roster size. But when a guild's created, how many members can join when it's like fresh off the bat? I mean, as much as right off.
So that's a good question, and we don't have an absolute answer for you right now. And because we don't have that absolute answer, I don't even want to speculate on what the number is going to be. I would just say that we're cognizant of two things. One, we're cognizant of the fact that Zergs never make for fun gameplay. And we want to make sure that our guild system doesn't encourage Zerging. And so because of that fact, we have some limitations in regards to guild size and leveling up the guild in respects to that. Now, on the other side of that coin, we are very cognizant of the fact that people who are friends and have been a part of large guilds want to be a part of that structure and be at that in the beginning of the game. So we have mechanisms for people to play together in groupings and raids and get involved in the guilds early on. We're going to make it meaningful for both small guilds to contend with the larger guilds when it comes to content and their role in the world.
Right.
And if you're a guild, like a preset guild that wants to earn the higher cap, I'm sure that, there's definitely an avenue for you to get that quickly.
Fairly quickly.
Okay. Okay, great.
And to be clear as well, we're not exactly sure whether or not that cap will be bound behind a progression path. It might be, but I don't know if it's going to be intrinsically tied to a leveling. You may be able to start with your max capacity in the guild. We haven't decided that for sure yet.
Kind of all how we find balancing in those stages. So.
Yeah, and it's going to involve testing too.
And
just what feels right.
Yeah, and I knew this very early, but with a lot of these communities already rallying behind Ashes of Creation, these are things that when they're brought up are now floating around people's heads.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I will say this, that that in addition to our focus on an individual's role within the world, we also are going to have, and this is going to be a bold statement, Cotton.
Oh God, I'm going to hold on my seat. Get ready.
In my opinion, we're going to have the most in-depth guild system of any MMORPG I've ever experienced, and it is going to be something that will be very fluid for leaders to come in and organize a community and get it up and running quick.
Oh, that wasn't
that bad.
Well, it's a bold statement when I say we're going to have the most.
No, absolutely. That's a bold statement, but I don't doubt it. I mean, part of it is that Steven is Steven, and he has certain goals, and he's been somewhere in these games. And
what does that mean, Steven?
It means you love running giant.
I like it.
But it's something that is constantly talked about over here, is making sure that the guild experience is a good one. In order to make it good, you need to be able to organize, you need to be able to feel like the guild is more than just a chat room. Sure. And so that's a big focus.
Right. So what functions will guild leaders have to facilitate guild cohesion in mustering of forces in reaction to the game world events such as bosses, PvP, caravans? Is there going to be something like a rallying call for guildies, so to speak, so that if something's going on, or as a guild leader, you're like, hey, this is happening and I want at least attention brought to my guildies. This is what we're kind of focusing on outside of chat, obviously. Will there be those things?
So I think we need to define what guild cohesion is and drawing attention to, because in previous games I've played, one of the biggest issues with how it can become a Zergfest is the ability for guilds to instantly rally and port to anywhere in the map. And that presents itself as a problem, in my opinion, because at that point it just becomes an issue of who can rally faster and who has more numbers, right? Exactly. And I think there should be an element of intelligence gathering, an element of strategy, and there should be some traversal required in order for that guild to congrue. So on the first point of guild cohesion, I think that comes down to user interface in regards to what functionality is available for guild leaders and or officers who are appointed in order to reach out to members who are either online or offline. And I think a portion of that interface for our system is going to come into play when we're talking about integration of a certain software that we've been discussing.
Right.
And whether or not that's going to have application outside of in-client. And there's a potential for that. And then in addition, while in-client, if a guild leader wants to open a user interface window potentially with a guild member that's like attention, like a server message.
It basically would be like a server message, but on behalf of the guild.
Yeah, exactly, to your guild only.
Right.
It's all about figuring out the best way to present that information to the player, right? But we definitely want to present that information.
Yeah,
so.
it's a big portion of the guild play is having a very functional UI for guild leaders to utilize when it comes to, communicating in client with their members.
Make sure they have the tools that they need to keep that organization.
And that includes like, board messages and reminders of the day and messages of the day and a calendar. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking something more along the lines of like the beacons of Gondor or something. You see them lit. You must
That's what I
go.
was going to mention, like map beacons.
It's time for us to move. The problem is if you had 100 guilds and they all had beacons. I mean, the whole
everybody would be blind.
Yeah, would be on the exactly. Would be on fire.
There you go. It's self-defeating.
Ashes. This is how the world got destroyed.
Ashes.
Initially, all the guilds lit all the fires, and the world just blew up.
Nice. I like it.
Nice.
New meaning.
So like,
You have to go rewrite the lore.
how will the guild advancement be determined, and will there be forms of like passive buffs or active abilities that can be used by guild leaders and members?
I'm stealing your water, by the way.
No, steal my water. It's fine. I don't care.
Stealing the front.
So advancement is going to relate to a few things. We want guilds to participate in the development of the world. So in order for guilds to advance, they're going to have to show some accomplishment in regards to that development as well. And those accomplishments can be tied behind questing, certain quest events. They can be tied behind the crafting of certain types of items.
They can be tied to participating in certain types of events.
Yeah. I think there's going to be an in-depth structure in regards to the advancement of a guild
And being active in the world.
active in the world. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So how large are dungeons going to be in this game? Can we expect these small little point A to point B affairs, or will we have these sprawling networks of caverns and rooms with multiple access points from the surface or even from the Underrealm, since we unlock that?
Ooh, Underrealm.
Underrealm.
Yes. No, I think we're our intent in regards to dungeons and just adventuring. Oh my God.
That's one of my favorites.
I like it too. Is that it's going to be massive. I mean, our world is massive.
Yeah.
Right?
We are going to have a big focus on big things.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean we do want a scale of content for people to participate in, right? Sometimes people log in and they only have 30 minutes to play.
Yeah.
And we want places where people can do that and kind of experience hey, that was a really fun little session. Now I got to log off. So there will be larger commitments and smaller commitments throughout the whole world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but we do have a pretty strong focus on these set pieces.
For sure, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to see massive caverns, massive dungeons in the world, and I think that those are going to be popular spots in the open world for people to contend with over who's present there and stuff like that.
Speaking of overworld, will dungeons be subject to the same open world PvP?
There definitely will be some dungeons because they're open world dungeons that are going to probably be prime locations in regards to certain features and or items and drop tables.
Yep, and or open PvP zones.
And or open PvP zones, yeah. I think one of the interesting components of Ashes of Creation and our flagging system is that it presents the potential for two conflicting parties to have open conflict in the open world over pretty much anything that they may want or disagree with. And if that pertains to a hunting ground, not just the caravan or the castles or the nodes or whatever, it can exist in that area where people are going to be contending to have, participation in that area, basically.
Right.
Right.
So, that kind of leads in with these open worlds. How are you going to make the PvE experience, and yes, there's a cattail right on my shoulder. How are you going to
I was wondering what that was.
Make it so that raid and dungeon bosses can be done with their mechanics in place without Zergfest happening to just ignore everything?
So the interesting thing about when we're designing encounters like that involve these raid bosses and dungeon bosses is that there are specific mechanics that will be necessary for the players to learn and react to from both a skill standpoint and a knowledge standpoint that are going to be required to complete the boss and cannot be zerged through. And you could bring a large Zerg as you want if they're not aware of certain mechanics or if they do not react to them appropriately, they're going to get wiped. So we want to make sure that our content has meaning in the sense of exploration and discovery for exactly what this boss is all about and what type of skills this boss has and how that relates to our raid composition and our tactics and strategy in that fight. And it's not just going to be something that let's rally everyone possible and just zerg it down. That's not experiencing content. That's just bulldozing through it.
Right. Okay. I'm going to move on to some freehold stuff because I know a lot of people were questioning about freeholds. So when you own a freehold, okay, is there going to be a type of like a robust band friend or co-owner mechanic for homesteads in addition to being able to lock your door and bar entry in a PvP situation outside of sieges when everything could just be burnt to the ground?
Yes, you will be able to lock your door.
Oh, good.
And yes, you will be able to put an access list to it.
Nice.
And as far as co-owner goes, it's always a little bit rough. Some of the games that I've worked on before, co-ownership can turn into a pretty big mess when it turns out to like, hey, you've put an item down, I've put an item down, who owns that item when we pack up the house and move? Or
Well, that's why we have our divorce court.
There we go.
That's why we have our divorce court. Confirmed.
Part of the social systems that you didn't know about.
You get half of a table.
So co-ownership is something that I would like to do, but we need to do a little bit more work on our back end to make sure that works the way that we want it to, and that ownership transfers in the way that players would expect it to. So that's something we're still working on, but it's something that we're planning on having.
I think potentially, in addition to that, from the perspective of potentially access, like what's the difference between co-ownership and access? I think we intend to have access, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
And that in and of itself can kind of mimic co-ownership.
Right.
But we're still maintaining a solitary owner.
Gotcha.
Right.
Now, what's going to happen to this freehold should a node that it's connected to either de-level or be completely destroyed? Will it just fall apart and degrade, or will it still be usable just outside of protection of the node that it was connected to?
Those poor citizens.
Okay, so to be clear, in Ashes of Creation, I think we might be getting some gameplay footage.
Ah.
Oh, it should be on the screen. Okay, are we going to be getting it soon though? Do we have it?
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to show it now?
No, you show it when you're ready.
Or we can show while we're talking. As soon as you spool it up, you're ready to go. Okay, so Ashes of Creation. Oh my gosh.
The ice cream truck is here and it's waiting for Steve.
Oh, it alalways pulls in front of the
It
office.
just stopped just exactly for us.
And I always buy ice cream for the office.
he does.
I'm sorry, guys. It came at the wrong time.
I'm sad now.
Anyways, so in regards to how freeholds react to sieges. So in Ashes of Creation, change is a constant mechanic. It's something that players need to be cognizant of, like when defending and we have our gameplay footage, by the way. Again, this is pre-alpha footage, so take it with a grain of salt. It's not very polished at the moment, but it is a beautiful thing that we've spent a long time over the past 15 months creating, and we love it so far. So this is a mage running through one of the great divine gateways in the world in the Ayla starting area. Sorry, getting back to your question.
Yes.
When a siege is declared against a node, and if that siege is successful, you're going to see the zone that pertains to that node after the successful siege will go through a period of open combat. where these freeholds are susceptible to destruction and attack. And after that period is complete, which it could last an hour or 2 hours, we haven't determined that yet, but after it is complete, if your freehold still resides within a stage 3 node or above's zone of influence, it will be fine. If it does not, then it will be gone.
Okay.
The freehold will likely
So
be
even
gone.
if the city goes down, you actually can defend. You can be out there with a pitchfork defending against,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
With a
Yes.
hose, just trying to
That
put the
is true.
fires out.
And there's going to be structures that you can build on your freehold that could assist with that. There could even be guards that you could retain through some type of mechanic or purchase or gold sink, whatever it is, that can be at your freehold in the event that a siege is successful and help defend. And you can have your friends come and help defend. Your guild can come and help defend. It is another point. And those
It is
people,
the last stand,
exactly.
basically. Yeah.
And those people that attacked that node, they may be this, roving band of marauders going through the countryside trying to destroy the freeholds that existed here. And they may see yours with a bunch of your friends defending it, and they say, okay, forget that one. We're going to go to the next, whatever the deal may be. But yeah, that's how that's going to work. And it's another thing important to note that, the way housing has worked in other games is it is a lot of resources and a lot of time to build up that housing.
Right.
Ours is more cognizant of the fact that housing is going to change. It's going to move. It's
probably going to get destroyed.
It's probably going to get destroyed. So it's not going to be as intensive to get up and running again.
It's not going to be onerous. You'll be able to
Exactly.
copy your layout. You'll be able to,
save your build inside and stuff like that.
and stuff like that. So it's not going to be, the end of the world if your homestead or your freehold gets.
And one of the other things
down.
that we're going to test in alpha and beta, which is a potential, is that these certificates of freehold may have on them additional design features like you built a furnace or you built a smelter, or you built a home, whatever the deal is, and that may get included onto your certificate. And if it gets destroyed and you've already built up those places on the certificate before and you go to lay it down somewhere else, it'll come pre-built or something along those lines. That's something
we could
another
more than
thing.
likely do something like that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that these freeholds, like you said, with these writs of freehold, the plots of land that you can build anything you want on, in place. Now, how are these going to be set up? Are we going to see something like every free patch of earth taken up by these freeholds, or is it something closer to some other games where there's designated housing zones that's where they can be built?
So that's a good question. Obviously, assets within the world carry with them a template that exists their location, basically. And there's going to be pathing routes, and there's going to be dungeons and events, spawn areas, and all that kind of stuff that are going to have kind of block out areas. But essentially, I don't think we're going to go down the route of, hey, there's a designated plot over here that everybody gets to rush to and grab. It's going to be more open within the zone of influence around a node, but there's also going to be proximity markers between freeholds so that you can't stack them necessarily on top of each other and just kind of make this ugly looking countryside thing.
We want stuff to look good.
Yeah, we want there to be some space between you and your neighbors a little bit.
Right.
So it's going to be a more open plot placement design, but maintaining that proximity distance between the templates. That
And you are going to need a leveled up node in order to place one to begin with. So it's not going to be just everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a land rush. either.
It'll make sense with regard to what the world looks like, kind of. So
right.
You'll see civilization with civilization.
Yes.
Okay. And that actually does follow up here pretty nicely with going into nodes section again, because I know we go over nodes a lot, but I had some pretty focused questions here.
Of course.
And you kind of answered that, at least with the player housing side. But when these nodes level up, and who decides the location of these buildings, specifically within the cities themselves? Are they pre-done by like NPCs and stuff like that? But then you also mentioned player-run governments and having the ability to choose specific services. Like, how are these things being placed? Are we just going to see willy-nilly cities, or did you hire a city planner?
No, so nice.
We hired a city planner.
Excellent.
You're going to see that when nodes develop, they're going to have a base style template that's reflective of a few things. It's going to be reflective of the race that is the primary founders of the node, and that's going to determine like the architecture, design, and the types of buildings you're going to see. It's going to be determined by the type of node, whether it's a military, divine, economic, or
Scientific.
Scientific, sorry. And those types of factors are going to come into the way that the node is going to appear initially. the player-run government is going to have sectored out zones within the node that are unbuilt and are going to require direction from the mayor and the government to determine what do we build here. Is it going to be an apartment complex? Is it going to be a merchant house? Is it going to be a thieves guild? Is it going to be a marketplace? Is it going to be a barracks? There's a whole bunch of determining factors of what types of buildings are going to get constructed. And then once that is determined, the community is going to have to come together through driving resources through caravans and bringing them into the node and actually constructing that building through questing and stuff like that.
Right. Excellent.
Right. So it's a little bit of A and a little bit of B, right? Like there's going to be a lot of stuff provided out of the box, and then there'll be decisions that the government has to make as far as how to kind of specialize their city. And once they choose certain things, they won't be able to choose other things. So there's going to be, we expect there to be node builds, basically.
And there could be regime changes.
Yeah.
Like if somebody doesn't like the fact that a market was built and they want to re-elect a new government next cycle, they can do so, and that market could be destroyed and a new building in place. So there's going to be
the will of the
those
people.
Elections, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Get a mandate.
Right. All right, so leads me into another fun question. Will these cities that are being developed by node progression have predetermined names, or are we going to see some stupid player-created name like City McCityface?
We talked about this.
Dude,
Number one, that name is not stupid.
City McCityface is a great name. No,
Confirmed.
It's one of the names worth it.
It's going to be predetermined. There may be a list of names available for the city that could be initially determined by the creators, the primary people. They could choose from a list, but it's not going to be City McCityface.
No City McCityface. All right, you heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
True sadness.
I know.
See,
I'm sorry, all you memers.
I really like that just because, for the lore of the world, it's kind of nice to know that these cities actually are, were predetermined. So, when your franchise expands and someone writes about City A, you kind of have a logical idea of where it's at. Will each individual server have like a unique landmass, or is the world the same regardless, and the only thing that really changes is how the node is developed?
Yes, the world is the same regardless, and all that will change is how the nodes are developed.
Yes.
And that should change enough, I think. But having everything procedural like that, it doesn't work out that well usually.
Right,
it ends up feeling really generic and soulless, and we want to make sure that our environments feel crafted and that there's a reason for everything being there, not just algorithm A decided this might look good. So everything's going to be crafted, everything's going to be the same, but the stories and the cities and those things are all what's going to change.
Excellent. So with the enhanced naval combat and content that you guys are doing, all right, so I had some questions here. A, can ships be destroyed by either enemy players or monsters?
Yes.
Okay. Will I be able to siege a coastal city by sea?
Maybe. It's possible.
It's possible.
Right.
That's like a
it's
balance.
potentially possible.
Right. Yeah. It's something that we're still talking about. Now that we know that we're actually going to be doing it, we're going to be fleshing these ideas out a lot further.
Yeah.
It's something that we talked about. We thought would be really, really cool. But again, we have to really kind of game it out and make sure that it will be cool.
And there has to be a give and take there as well.
Right.
Meaning, founding a city along the coastline shouldn't inherently be more risky for the city during the siege.
Right.
So we're going to have to make sure that those mechanics blend well with each other and balance out.
Right.
Well, there you go. So underwater environments, how are they going to work? How are players going to actually be able to breathe? Because given, we don't really know much about the technology of the world here, so is there going to be, potions, spells? Are we going to be able to breathe underwater at all, or is it hold your breath and you got 30 seconds to figure out your way around?
I think that we're going to include a few different mechanics. There could potentially be items that may give you a magical ability to breathe underwater. There could be potions. There could be food. There could be
gillyweed.
Spells. Yeah, gillyweed. There we go. I told you, gillyweed. Yeah. No, there definitely could be a wide range of abilities to make because now we have that expansion where we're going to be including a lot of content underwater. We want to make sure that it's not going to be
it's accessible, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. It's really silly to make content that people can't play. So.
And we don't want it to be something that's cumbersome to navigate and stuff. And I think that's probably been the downside of a lot of other games that have introduced underwater content is the fact that players don't want to go there because it's a pain in the butt to actually go through.
It always feels like throwaway content almost, and it's something that we really want to focus on and make feel good.
All right, so this one is completely directed at Jeffrey over here, Jeffrey Bard.
Oh God!
Will the Bard class feature some like Star Wars Galaxies-esque non-combat roles where they can be used out of combat to restore players, into a rested status? Or this goes for any class, but since Bard is a bard.
Like maybe they could dance for the people?
Maybe. I mean, if that's their thing, because you did mention before that they don't have to play instruments, they could dance too.
If they're going to entertain you.
Write poetry, I don't know, whatever.
So probably not in that way. We want to really focus the social spaces on that. So it'll be more like where the area is and like who's taking part in that. We want those social spaces to kind of take that role, not necessarily a class. We don't want the class to be the downtime guy. We want the area to be the downtime guy. So there will be, bards will have utility, just like all classes will have utility out of combat. But rested experience specifically is probably not going to be that role.
Gotcha. Now we can see from the video that you have here, you have some combat, and you are playing a mage, so it kind of fits in. It almost looks like a lot of spells are instants, but are there going to be any spells that require you to remain, stationary while they are being casted, and give, will players have the ability to interrupt the spellcaster?
There will be very few that will lock you in place. That's not how we want our combat to roll. I think most people here think it's really boring to stand in place and cast the same spell over and over again.
Yeah.
But there are going to be a need for that, right? The summoner, when they're summoning their creature, more than likely isn't going to be running around. There will be other abilities that are kind of bigger that make you a bigger target by rooting you.
Yeah, again, it's a give and take.
But it's a give and take, right? And we don't want the moment to moment to be standing there, but there may be some times where you won't be able to move.
But generally, as a rule of thumb, when it comes to combat, even for any class, is going to involve a situational awareness and movement and positioning.
Right.
Right. And that comes into play when you're talking about instant casts or cast times that require no movement or that kind of stuff. Right. If there is a skill like that, there's a reason for it, and it's a give and take relationship.
We want you to take the time to make sure I'm actually in a good place where I can cast this spell, and it's really powerful, but I can't use it that often because people can get me while I'm in it. So it's going to depend on the ability itself. There's not going to be a crazy ton of them.
Okay.
And then also with regard to interrupts, there will be interrupts. You'll see that even though she's moving around, she does have a cast bar there. And while that cast bar is going off, there will be the chance to interrupt. And we've got the ability to counter that interrupt, and we've got interrupts or abilities that can interrupt better than other abilities. So
right. Now, I went through pretty much every Q&A that you guys have done in preparation for this, and you're probably going to hate me for this because you made a comment at one point,
oh God,
a long time ago in a land far, far away, that the spell book can only hold so many spells. Do you intend to limit the number of spells the player can actually learn, or is it just allusion to the number of abilities that you can actually have on your bar at a time?
Who said that?
Who said that?
Was that me?
Where was that said?
I hope it wasn't.
I believe it was actually Jeffrey, to be honest. No, it was...
Oh, what did I do?
What a gotcha moment.
No, that's
How many times must I tell you?
I will go back and give you
open
the
my mouth.
timestamp of when it happened. So
I don't know why I said that, but that's not a thing.
It was probably figurative.
It might have been figurative.
Yeah, probably in relation to the amount of skills that are going to be in your bar.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You're not going to have 100 spells for somebody. Spellbook can only hold so many spells. It was probably figuratively speaking, like, we don't want you to be encumbered with 50 spells to choose from, especially spells that were used back when you were level 10 and you never touch again.
Right. You're learning spells, and you're using a certain amount of them. So in a way, right?
Yeah, not hard.
right on. Right on.
Yeah. So definitely more regards to the hotbar. There is not a spell book. There's no memorization.
All right.
That sort of
cool.
thing.
Now, again, Jeffrey, I'm pulling you out here because you said you touched on unique and legendary items. that are going to be very hard to find. Okay, some perhaps taking years. Now, here's the fun part. Will there be lore in Ashes of Creation to be a backstory history for these things, and will it feature clues to finding these hidden artifacts, like pieces to a puzzle that can be made more complete as more and more players uncover the different lore, hashtag meaningful lore?
Right, no, totally. Like, that's absolutely the intention of these things. We want it, like, when you discover one of these items, we want it to make sense to you, right? We want it to be like, oh, I get it now. Like, this whole story now makes sense.
Right. And it's like, hey, this item was discovered on that server, and it's a piece of a broader puzzle.
Right, and they're going to go like, wait, what story are you talking about? We experienced something totally different. Yes. We're going to have to go check that out.
I like it.
So, yeah, absolutely, that's totally the intention of that system.
Gotcha. All right. So, PvP-related stuff. The word battleground has been thrown around quite a few times on the live stream by everybody. So, cycling out everyone. But in this post-World of Warcraft era, the term battleground has become very specific as an instance PvP zones. Now, if this is true, how are your battlegrounds, as you said, going to function? And how do they relate to what you've already said with the arena, the arena system? And how are you going to link it and make it meaningful to the rest of the world?
Well, just to be a quick clarification in regards to our terminology when using the term battleground, is because we're instituting, at least for me, because we're instituting a flagging system that allows for PvP to erupt anywhere, I consider battlegrounds kind of interchangeable with a zone that exists within the open world that does not include our flagging mechanics, but instead flags everyone for battle.
Just like
so
PvP.
it's a battleground. It's open PvP, and that includes the caravan system. It includes castle sieges and node sieges and objective-based guild wars and stuff like that. But in addition to that, we have arena systems.
Excellent.
So.
And that's what I wanted clarification, because when people hear battleground, they think of 10v10s or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But you already mentioned arenas.
Scenarios.
Yeah, our scenarios.
Right. Yeah, so again, battlegrounds is just a way for me to refer to open world systems that relate to everyone being involved in a PvP situation specific to that occurrence.
Gotcha. So when sieging a node, what is the win mechanic for each side?
You got, just so you know, Aggelos, if you want to take that question back, you have two more questions. So you choose wisely, sir.
Darn.
Wisely. Out of your 150 questions remaining.
Right, out of the 2,000 questions remaining.
You have two
Yeah,
more.
I know. Seriously, I'm actually thinking of more as we're going. So,
Oh, great.
okay, no, we're gonna stick with
have to have you on
that.
again.
What is the win condition for sieges for each side?
The win condition for sieges.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. So we will
just
release
focus on
more on that. Yeah, I know. We're going to release more on that in the future through a blog, because our sieging mechanics are very in depth, and there's
a lot of phases to it.
A lot of
Yeah.
phases, yeah. And we want to make sure that I don't give you a 1-minute answer and then people get lost with 1,000 more questions on it.
Right.
So I would probably reserve that one for a blog post that's going to come in the future.
Okay, so does that mean I get my two
but
questions?
There will be a thing. You have to
Right,
flag.
there's a thing.
There will be a thing.
Flag.
Progressive
yeah, I know,
objectives
right.
or
Okay, we can get into that. Okay. So just to get in a little bit, there's going to be objectives for the attackers, and that's going to revolve around a central point that exists either within a castle or within a city node. There's also going to be objectives or quadrants that the attackers can capture during the siege. That's going to harm the defender's respawn and ability to defend, and is going to give advancements to the attackers and where they can spawn at inside the castle and or in the siege and stuff like that. And then it's also going to decrease their casting time when it comes to actually pulling the flag down and stuff like that. So there's mechanics for then the defenders to assault the outpost of the attackers and where they're coming from and stuff like that, to kind of disable them in certain regards. And there's also going to be a time frame that they will need to hold out the defense of a central point, either within a node or in a castle.
Okay.
As a quick overall gist, but there's a lot of very specific mechanics that relate to both castle sieges and node sieges.
All right. So, final question, since, I haven't touched anything. All right, so, question events. Once a node is destroyed or reset, for instance, does that open the path up for another node to develop? For example, say you have two nodes developed close to one another on, say, opposite sides of a valley, and if one...
Tale of two cities.
Yeah, there you go. Tale of two cities.
Right.
One node becomes dominant, takes over the other node, and opens a dungeon. And the mountains behind it, blah, blah, blah. And it locks access to a dungeon that might have been on the other side. That node is destroyed.
Absolutely.
resets, can people then go to the other side and unlock those stories?
They can then begin to try and progress that second city that got stunted in its growth and discover all of the storylines, mechanics, and quests and dungeons and events that are tied to that node that never came to fruition because its sister city progressed further.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I've been put on the blocker now, so.
Thanks, Aggelos.
Thank you, Aggelos. We
Great
appreciate
questions.
it.
Thank you.
We'll probably have you on again in the future. I think you're a great Q&A facilitator or moderator, whatever it is. And, question asker, and we think the Dungeon Crawler Network is a cool crew.
Yeah, it's fun watching you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care, buddy.
Yeah.
Do we have a few questions we can get to from the forums?
We do.
We do.
We do?
Oh, very cool. I don't know. Do we? Yes? Okay.
I just wasn't sure if they're being thrown up there. Or...
Oh, I don't know. Okay,
I'll
that's
just
your
do it from
phone.
here.
That's fine. Oh, by the way, I hope everybody enjoyed the gameplay stuff that we put up there.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about it.
We're going to have some more next week as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a little hunting.
Maybe a little bit of hunting.
Maybe gathering some meat and eating that meat. And,
possibly.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see.
Nom.
Okay, so the first question we have is from Prophet. Will we be able to customize the ships?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's going to be a component of ship building and ship classes is going to have some customization in regards to, their speed and their ability to take damage and deal damage and
aesthetically, of course.
Right,
as
aesthetically,
well.
absolutely.
Right. By We Robert, will there be NPCs on our freeholds? Yes.
I think there will be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's possible, right? Like, it's up to you. But yeah.
Oh,
right,
yeah,
that's true.
But
yeah,
it's true. You can choose to hire people or not.
Yeah.
By Cry More, how will guildholds interact with the village, city, metropolis nodes? If so, how? Oh, so I guess maybe they're referring to like guild halls.
Guild halls and their So guild halls are going to unlock certain actions that a guild can perform within a city. It's going to unlock a different relationship with that node that guilds are going to have access to, specific benefits from the node itself. It's going to allow a guild to participate if we reach our $3 million goal, participate in the shareholder system. There's a lot of different things that it does.
Next one by Scone of Doom, great name. Will there be multiple religions in Ashes, and will there be incentives or some mechanic to create, quote, meaningful conflict between these religions for PvP?
Oh no.
Right. So I think the answer there is actually partly in the question when you mention incentives.
Yes.
Like, by giving people incentives to do things, there's naturally going to be conflict for certain things, but we're never from the beginning trying to pit people against each other inherently. Right. So we're just giving you the option to choose and do, and more.
And
so
as you said, by
control.
giving incentives, naturally that's going to erupt in certain conflict. We don't want there to be. Well, I'm not going to say we do or don't want there to be, but regardless of the fact. There is progression paths in certain religions. There are multiple religions available within the game because there are several deities within the game.
And they offer different things.
And they offer different things. And it's up to you to determine what things you want to have. And that could pit you against other people.
Next question by Mayrick. Will leveling experience be primarily attained through quests, monster kills, or an intended combination of PvE/PvP objectives?
I think it's a blend
all
of
the above.
It's a blend of everything.
In addition to crafting, in addition to exploration, in addition to there's a lot of stuff.
There's everything.
I think that's why a lot of our focus is on contribution. It's kind of like how you're contributing to the world.
Good point.
Daythor, what happens to a freehold? Oh wait, sorry, Daythor. He's asking a question, or she is asking a question about the freehold corresponding node destroyed, but we answered that backwards.
Yeah.
Lazy Giant, will players be able to have multiple freeholds in different nodes?
No.
No, you may own one of each type of housing. That's one freehold, one static node home, one instanced apartment home. But you may only ever declare citizenship for one node.
Right.
Melodl, will the area music change depending on the node's level and under attack? So basically, conditional music changes.
Absolutely,
100%.
For sure intend
When
for
a
that
battle
to
gets
happen.
declared, you're going to have some heavy percussions and things going on.
Yeah. We want to focus on the music a lot. We understand it's really important. And it's gotten a short shrift in previous titles, but
Yes.
Krivel, will you be able to store your items within your freehold? Yes.
Yes.
That's one of the big parts of it.
Yeah, one of the most
big
attractive
part.
aspects of a freehold is that you have storage space there.
So Gothic.
Because storage is
Oh,
important.
sorry.
Sorry, go
My
ahead.
bad. Gothics, will a guild be able to declare a war to another guild?
Yes.
good.
We did it, guys.
Yay! Well, guys, we hope you guys enjoyed the live cast today. We'll be back with you on Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Again, from everybody here at Intrepid Studios, we cannot express to you enough our thanks. It's very exciting to see the progress that we're making on our Kickstarter, becoming the #1 funded Kickstarter MMORPG very soon.
Very soon, right around the corner.
We'll make an announcement.
Come on,
when it
guys, let's make
happens.
this happen.
We're excited. Get out there and share this project as you have been doing with all of your
Yeah,
friends
you guys
and
have been
guilds.
absolutely incredible.
We love it, and we will see you guys on Monday.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, you
Have
guys.
a great
Later.
weekend.